Sitting here with Brian Morrissey. He's digital editor at Adweek, a notable publication in the advertising industry. And Brian, thanks for chatting. I want to talk to you a little bit about hyperbole in social media. We're sitting here in Austin, Texas, and there are tremendous claims out there from all the vendors about what works, why you should hire them, who's a social media expert. So what do you hear in your role every day? Your phone rings off the hook. What do you hear? What are the claims?
Well, I mean, I think like never before the sort of signal to noise ratio is so out of whack. And it's because there's these new channels and new opportunities, and everyone rushes for white space. And so social media is the hot thing. And if a lot of chief marketing officers are saying, what's our social media strategy, there's going to be a ton of people that are rushing in and saying, we can be your social media strategy. And I think that's the main thing, is everyone is saying the same things, and it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff.
So what are the categories do you hear? If you were to take all the phone calls or press releases that come in and think about grouping them into a series of categories, what are the main tools you're seeing that people are saying, this is really what you need to do?
Well, I mean, I would put it into people who are trying to sell advertising in some ways, ad networks of some sorts within social media. Then I would put application developers in another one, research developer. Tools, mostly listening tools and those kind of things. And then something that we've talked about a lot, the guru set, and that's the people who have expertise, either real or proclaimed, in this area, and that are selling their own consulting services.
So if you break that down, you have three categories. You have applications to execute, you have listening or measurement tools to analyze, and then you have sort of these strategists that overlay. What do you think for a given company, what's the priority? What should they be doing first? If you were a CMO of a company, how do you get started in designing and implementing a social media strategy?
Well, I mean, for me, I always think the brands I talk to that seem to be most successful in it are really, and this is something not new to you, but are looking at it as a strategy. Like, what's our strategy, instead of okay, get me a social media strategy. It's like, what's our overall strategy, and how can social media help us actually execute on that? And sometimes maybe social media isn't the answer. I mean, the problem is, it's kind of a bigger problem that I see, is that there's this divide between the people who are involved in creating these social media tools and platforms, stuff like this, and the brands on the other side. I think it's a role that agencies, people are always proclaiming the death of agencies, but that agencies have a serious role in being that translator between all of the people that want to be the next Foursquare and the brands who are looking to sell more cases.
So here's another question for you. Michael Tracy years ago wrote a book called Discipline of Market Leaders, and he talked about different business strategies for different types of businesses that you can follow. You can be product focused like Apple, you can be customer service focused like maybe Zappos, or you could be operations focused like Walmart, have the lowest costs. But the idea is not every strategy fits every business. So from what you hear, is social media fit for every type of industry and strategy, or there are certain types of businesses where really it doesn't make sense to get into the space?
Well, I mean, I think it's so hard because social media is so amorphous, so yeah, there's probably something within social media, monitoring is kind of the baby step sort of thing of it. I don't think every company necessarily needs to be Comcast on Twitter. It makes sense for Comcast because they've got a ton of service issues. They need to fix their service issues, but Twitter is a nice way for them to actually address that. But I don't think it makes sense for every single brand to be using Twitter.
Yeah. What about results? A business is all about results.
Yeah.
What is it good for, and how do you measurement? And what are you seeing for case studies? Is it generating sales? Is it solving customer service issues? What are the levers that companies are really pulling?
I think customer service is, probably one of the easier ones to measure. I think you can measure the number of, consumer interactions you have and the number of problems solved, and then you can actually benchmark the value on that versus how much it costs if that went to a call center. And I think that's easier.
Okay.
I think, the bigger problem is when you get into these softer branding metrics and you're trying to figure out what it means when you run social media campaigns that are really buzz generating things. I think that's where it gets like sort of tough, because a lot of times the numbers are still small.
Okay.
You know, and even within advertising, I was just in this like panel here, advertising and stuff like this, and that's what I was talking about. This divide is that there are people who are application developers who are like, how many what's your user base have to be before you can really get brands on? 10,000, 15,000? Yeah, no, million, 2 million. Like, I mean, that's like the answer. If you're going to like, you know, move cases like for brands and stuff like this, there's this divide where people who are building these platforms think that scale doesn't matter at all. Like, I mean, I heard one guy who's saying, we don't like to talk in CPMs. And my joke's always like, it's because you don't have enough M's. Like that's why. I mean, so.
Well, there's another challenge as well. The other challenge is the time frame a campaign exists. I mean, a year ago, Skittles got a lot of buzz, and then it kind of disappeared. With apps, Pinch Media about a year ago did a study where they looked at millions of application downloads on iPhones, and they found that after 24 hours, you know, 80% of them weren't even being used. After 3 months, 1% were being used.
It's a reverse hockey stick.
Exactly. So, if people are moving to this time frame where they forget things, it's all about novelty. How can a business use social media, have a sustained campaign message over time without it just being a pulse?
Yeah, well, I think that's the big challenge. You know, I mean, RGA talks about this platforms plus campaign strategy, which is, you know, you have to develop a platform, you know, like a Nike Plus, of course, since everyone's still referencing that, and then you can run campaigns on top of it. But until you have a platform that ties to the consumer, you don't really have a ton to talk about necessarily, and it'll just be short-lived. I think what we're seeing in social media a lot right now are these blips, these campaigns, you know, rather than like long-term focused things, because that's really, 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 really hard. And it's not what advertising agencies really are set up to do.
So here's the final question, the big question for you is, you leave Adweek, you're sick of journalism, you become a CMO of a major company, and you need to install a social media strategy. What 5 questions would you try to answer to sort out what you need to build your strategy?
Oh, Jesus.
Or 3.
Okay, three's a lot better. I think I would have to start with, do I have a product or service that's worth discussing, that's worth people recommending? I mean, at the end of the day, you want people doing your marketing for you. I think that's what every brand wants. But the problem is a lot of brands are stuck in a situation where they have an unremarkable product or service, and that they haven't innovated on it in a way to be worth talking about. I mean, the reason Zappos is successful in customers, or is successful in social media, is not because it uses social media tools, but because it has remarkable customer service. That's the only thing that makes it worth talking about. But the problem is most companies are dealing with unremarkable products and services. So if I were in the marketing department, I would want to, like, you know, actually get into like, how can we make our product and service more remarkable to talk about. That would be like the overarching thing that I would be interested in.
I lied. One last question. What question do you see ahead with social media? Like, what is the unanswered question that people still have to solve?
The unanswered question? I think it's like, can it move cases? I mean, at the end of the day, like, last year I think was a lot of excitement over these tools and things like that, but they're just tools. And at the end of the day, you know, brands need to sell X number of goods. And can social media actually help them do that in a more efficient way than what they're doing right now in other media? And until it can prove that it can, it's always just going to be like a bit of a sideshow.
Great. Brian Morrissey, thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, thank you.